Our honeymoon in Rthymno, Greece, last January, shifted from romantic bliss to a total nightmare. My heart aches with a regret that is unbearable, perhaps even unforgivable. I lost Anna. My beloved wife was taken from me in a way I never could have imagined. Those old tales of ghosts and witches I used to dismiss with a laugh. I've come to realize just how wrong I was to ignore them. Anna and I loved to travel, particularly to old places. We'd seek out little towns rich in history. So, there we were in Rthymno, a town on the northern coast of Crete in Greece. We planned a 2-day visit before we move on to Athens. And let me tell you, it felt like we had traveled back in time. The streets were narrow, the buildings were old, and there was a weird quietness in the air. Our hotel was cozy and cute, but it was oddly empty. I asked the hotel front desk why there were so few guests. The lady replied because it was off-season. Anyway, the next day we were grabbing some coffee at this cafe that seemed like it had been around forever. The owner, an old gentleman with white hair and a nicely tanned face, started chatting with us. We asked him where we should explore in town. He mentioned this beautiful park where we could hike a bit, but he made it clear that we shouldn't go past the park to this old mansion. That piqued my curiosity. I asked him why. The old man hesitated, his hands gesturing a warning. There's an old mansion beyond. It's cursed, home to a witch. Better to stay clear. That's all I can say. With that, the old man went back to the kitchen, shaking his head as if he regretted telling us about the park. Anna and I exchanged glances. We were quite sure that it was just some silly local legend that all old cultures have. The park was actually really beautiful and peaceful. But, you know how it goes. We couldn't resist checking out the mansion. We could see it from the park. A beautiful but ancient architecture that sat on the hill. It was huge and looked abandoned for years. The gates were all rusty and the garden was overgrown. We took some pictures, joked about ghosts, and thought nothing of it. When we got back to the hotel, we were a little beat, so we decided to dine in the hotel's restaurant. Our waiter asked how our day was. I told him about the park. "Oh, that's a very nice park," he said. "You didn't go further, though, did you?" "As a matter of fact, we did," I replied cheerfully. I pulled out my phone and showed him some pictures of the mansion we took. Our waiter's face turned white as a ghost. He wouldn't even look at the pictures. He genuinely seemed really worried. He told us this wild story about a witch living there who targeted young women. Many years ago, girls and young women started disappearing in the town. It was later found that the witch used to kidnap them and cut out the body parts that she liked. She was later locked in the mansion by a priest, and no one was allowed to enter that area. I could see our waiter's body shaking. Anna gave out a smile and tried to reassure our waiter. "I'm sure it's fine. See, I came back in one piece, unharmed." She raised her arms to show that her body was intact. Anna and I had a good laugh as our waiter cleared the table and walked away. We went back to our room. Anna was feeling really tired, so we went to bed early. The room was silent, the only sound being the distant hum of the sea. At around midnight, a soft voice counting broke the silence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. At first I thought Anna was murmuring in her sleep. Half asleep, I mumbled, "Honey, where you going? Go back to sleep." Later, the counting grew louder, more insistent. I opened my eyes, groggily, seeing Anna's silhouette against the bathroom door. Something felt off, but my drowsy mind couldn't grasp it. 78,105, 78,106, 78,107. I got up and headed to the bathroom. The door creaked open to reveal Anna sitting on the closed toilet seat, engulfed in darkness. "Hun, you okay?" Why are you sitting in the dark?" I reached for the light switch, a sense of dread building in my gut. The light flickered on, revealing a horrifying scene. The floor was littered with strands of Anna's hair, her head almost bald, the scalp dotted with blood. She was methodically pulling out her hair, each strand accompanied by a whispered count. Her eyes were vacant, a faraway look in them that sent chills down my spine. "Anna!" I cried, rushing to her. But as I touched her hands, her head slowly turned towards me. Those eyes, they weren't hers. They glowed an unnatural yellow, brimming with malice. Her lips twisted into a grotesque smile, something dark and sinister lurking behind it. Suddenly, an unseen force hurled me across the room. My back slammed against the wall, pain exploding in my head. My vision blurred. The last thing I saw was Anna's twisted smile before darkness enveloped me. When I woke up, it was in a stark hospital room, confusion and fear wrestling in my mind. The doctor said Anna had suffered a severe mental breakdown, but I knew it was more than that. The witch from the mansion, her curse, had claimed my Anna, leaving her an empty shell. She's physically here, but mentally lost, a prisoner, in her own mind. Some places are better left unexplored. I was petrified. It felt like all the energy had been sucked out of me. I was completely drained and exhausted. I felt like I had reached my breaking point, on the verge of death. Unable to stand, I had to crawl and drag the cursed painting to the wood stove. With whatever strength I had left, I threw the canvas into the flames. As soon as the painting caught fire, the flames started dancing and swirling around. The scariest part? The painting started screaming. It let out a howl that was otherworldly and full of torment, a sound so filled with pain and fury that it creeped to my core. The fire grew bigger and hotter, the smoke so thick that I could barely breathe. I hoped that this would be the final showdown with this thing, that it almost killed me. Antique picture frames are a hobby of mine. I am always on the lookout for something quaint and unique. Being a painter, I like to get the frames first, and then paint a picture, which I think suits their frame's history and design. I picked up an old but intricately designed frame from an antique shop near Soho. I remember the store owner telling me it was a bargain. I thought I saw a flicker of relief in his eyes when I took it off his hands. Back in my studio, I started a fire in the wood stove and poured myself a gin. I began to clean it. The picture was barely visible under layers of grime. But as I gently wiped away the years of neglect, a face started to emerge. It was a woman, her features delicate, yet captivating, with a haunting gaze that seemed to pierce right through me. Her beauty was so sensual that I thought no man could resist her in real life. After cleaning, I put it up on my easel, appreciating the intoxicating beauty of the woman. That night, I totally passed out in my recliner chair. I had this crazy dream, more like a vivid, unreal fantasy. The woman in the painting came to life. She literally walked out of the canvas and into my dimly lit studio. Her figure was draped in a thin, sexy gown that showed off her body. Her eyes, a captivating dark color, glowed in the moonlight streaming through the window. She floated towards me, the air filled with a crazy electric vibe. My heart pounded so hard, I could practically feel it in my chest. When her fingers brushed against me, it was like a spark igniting a bonfire. Her lips, cold and lifeless, finally touched mine in a forever-long kiss. Her powerful presence made it impossible for me to move, as if I were under her control, completely helpless. Her red hair wrapped around me, making me feel as if she was sucking the life right out of me. She was becoming stronger, more alive, while I was fading away, feeling the icy grip of death creeping up on me. In a moment of sheer panic, Fueled by the instinct to survive, I managed to shove her away. I struggled to sit up, my body weak and trembling. I felt completely disoriented, drained, as if I had been disconnected from my very essence. It wasn't a dream. The wood stove was still on, the fire burning brightly. But it had changed. Her cheeks had an unnatural flush, her eyes sparkled with life, and her lips, they were deep red with a drop of blood on them. I knew I had to destroy this painting, or whatever lived inside it would kill me tonight. My strength faltering, my legs gave out, and I found myself crawling on the studio floor to grab my X-Acto knife lying on the work table. I began stabbing and cutting the painting into pieces. With the shredded canvas in hand, I dragged myself closer to the wood stove. I tossed the remnants into the fire and watched them burn. As the shredded canvas hit the flames, an unearthly scream erupted from the stove. It was a scream of pain and anger, filling the studio with a terrifying sense of horror. Shadows of the vampire filled the studio. I could clearly see the anger on her face, showing her extended, sharp fangs. Lying on the floor, trembling, as the echoes of the scream started to fade, the shadow of the vampire disappeared. All that remained was the sound of the fire crackling in the wood stove. I couldn't help but wonder, have I killed the vampire for good?